Hello and welcome back to Robert's Reviews. Before we get into today's review, I'd like to give off just a couple of quick announcements. Most of them are announcements you've heard, but I'll make them quick. If you haven't already heard, make sure you tune in starting October 26th through the 31st. Every single day, I will be posting a new review on a new movie that is on Netflix that is horror or thriller related. I'm doing this because people might want to know what they want to watch on Halloween, and this is just for me to give them a little basis of maybe you like this, maybe you won't. And make sure you turn into that. We have a couple quick surprises, actually, for that week that I'm really excited for. So make sure you tune into those. That week we will be doing 1922, The Endless, Hush, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, Sweetheart, and a film that you can vote for. In the description down below, you'll see a link to the Facebook group. Go on in there, and then hit the join group button, and I will get a notification. I'll be very happy about it. And once you're in there, you can actually vote on the poll for whatever you want me to review on Halloween. All of these movies that will be coming out that week, aside from maybe the polled one, depending on what it is, I have not seen these before. In fact, I'm starting to watch them tonight with 1922, so I'm very excited. So make sure you hop on that train and join that group. But without further ado, let's get right into the video today. And today we will be reviewing Thor: The Dark World. This movie came out in 2013. It was directed by Alan Taylor and written by Christopher Yost, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely. This is the second movie in the Thor trilogy / quadrilogy. Quadruple? Is it called a quadruple if it's in movies? A quadrupie? I'm not sure. There are 4 of them. There's only 3 of them out now. The 4th one comes out, 22? 23? But yeah, this, I'm going to come right out and say this is my least favorite film in the MCU, aside from maybe one other one that we'll discuss in the future. And I'll give you my reasons for that later, but first I'm going to give you a quick little synopsis, of course. Thor 2, The Dark World, starts off with Jane and, her group of scientists, and they find this weird electromagnetic field thing that makes things float and, disappear. Jane finds herself, inside one of these weird, pockets of energy. And there she is injected with the Infinity Stone stuff. I forget what they actually call it. I don't remember what it's called, but it's I think it's the Power Stone. Maybe it's the Mind Stone, though. I don't remember. But she's injected with that stuff. It was really, really weird. But it essentially makes her this crazy weird person that, when you touch her, she explodes basically and hurts people around her. So Thor, being the non-scientist person, is well, we gotta bring you to Asgard then. So he brings her to Asgard, and then there's a whole issue there, and it's really annoying. And then these weird elves come out, the high elves that are always searching for this substance, come out, and they're oh, we're back after a bunch of years, and then they start coming after her because they want the substance. It's long, it's dry. Essentially what ends up happening is they end up going to this spot in the center of where the convergence is supposed to happen. And the convergence is when all of the realms correlate. And they do it once every 1,000 years, something like that. And so you can fall and accidentally end up in a different realm. Which happens a lot. Which actually is just not awful and not completely unwatchable. Final battle. This movie is really, really boring, is what I can really say. They took everything that I liked about Thor, which wasn't a lot, and then got rid of it. And there are some people that will argue that it was better than the first Thor. It's not. Anybody who says that is lying to you. Thor 2, in my opinion, was a disaster. And that is because they took the one cool thing about Thor that I really enjoyed, which was when he was on Earth, he had this, like, Earth's mightiest hero kind of thing. He was like, "Arr!" You know, like, he was this weird, like, he didn't understand, like, rhetorical phrases, kind of like Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy, but on a lower scale. And so they took that, and then they were like, oh, but by now, he would know most of those, so he would be almost like a normal human being. I'm like, well, then that kind of gets rid of the cool part of Thor for me. And with this film, one cool thing that I did enjoy about this film was that they decided to bring it to Asgard more. We didn't get a lot of Asgard in the first film. We didn't get enough of it. And so they brought him there and brought a lot of the stuff there. The issue is that we saw the part of Asgard I didn't really care about. We got to see inside, like, the main temple, like Odin's place and all that stuff, which is cool, I guess. But I wanted to see more about, like, what does Asgard have. Even now, after watching the third film, I mean, I still don't know what all of the buildings are in Asgard are for. I've only ever been inside that one building, so I feel like they could have expanded more with the other buildings that are there. I mean, there's so many. It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous computer generated set. Some of it actually was made. In fact, actually, I think for this movie, they made more of it than Thor because there's this big crash sequence that happens that I actually really enjoyed that. Because I thought it looked really cool. But that was really it. I mean, it's that and the final battle. And the final battle is pretty cool because there's these, like, warp zones that are invisible. So if you walk in one of those warp zones, whoop, you're gone. You're in a different realm, which I think should have been discussed a little bit more because random people will definitely walk into those little portals, and they didn't really discuss that at all. I mean, they would have died. They would have been sucked into, like, space and died. In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, actually, they do a little bit of damage control with the portals, but it's very minimal, and I feel like there should have been maybe an evacuation sequence where they evacuated people so they didn't have to do that. I felt it was a little distracting for me because, like, while the big battle's happening, I don't really care about what happens to Thor. Thor's going to be fine. Thor's a god. But these random people are, like, walking into portals and disappearing. Like, is no one going to care about that? Is no one going to worry about that? But the final sequence is really cool, and I did really enjoy that. But it was not worth the long and dry and boring stuff that happens before that. There are a couple cool moments within the film that I really enjoyed. Both of them have to do with death. So spoilers if you haven't seen The Dark World. Loki dies. Does he ever? Loki gets, like, stabbed and leads Thor on into believing that he dies. But the audience knows that he has not, in fact, died, and Thor doesn't find out till the third movie. And more importantly than that, Odin's wife dies, Thor's mother. And that was a really cool, I mean, really sad, obviously, but a really cool scene. Her funeral, the funeral for a god, was really cool. I really enjoyed that sequence. And again, the sequences in the film were really good. I liked it when nobody was talking. I had a great time. But anytime the dialogue was there, I was just so bored. I couldn't get into it. It just seemed, like, so overdone. Let's talk about the acting real quick. A lot of this will be repeated from my first Thor movie, but I'll discuss how their character has changed to make it a little bit more interesting. Chris Hemsworth as Thor, of course. I mean, there will never be a better Thor, if we're honest. There just won't be. Which is why I'm concerned for the third movie, because I'm hearing that we'll have a lady Thor, which I'm not against any women playing any parts. That's not why I'm concerned. I'm more concerned about the fact that I don't really like Natalie Portman very much, and I'm afraid that she will ruin it for me. Can't ruin what I don't really like in the first place, I guess. Although I like the third one. We'll get there in a bit. But Thor changed in the way that he becomes more human in the aspect of I understand what Earth is doing. And he cares about Earth way more than anybody else ever has in Norse mythology. And Odin even brings that up a little bit. He's like, maybe you should stop caring about the humans and, like, worry about, Asgard. And he's like, but I like the humans. So he goes to Midgard a lot, which is Earth. And I think it's cool how we get to see that side of him, but it's a little annoying because that was the one thing that I liked about his character in the first place, was the fact that he was so naive about how the world worked. And then we get to see a little bit more naivety later on when he gets brought to a different world in the third film. And I do enjoy that, and I like to see a naive Thor. But I like Thor's character in the third film significantly more than I like him in this film. Natalie Portman as Jane, already discussed. I don't really particularly enjoy Natalie Portman. It's not that she's bad or anything, it's just that she's kind of meh. Like, there's nothing special about Natalie Portman, and I just feel like every time she's there, I'm like, oh, it's Natalie Portman. And she's not as expressive as some other women are. I feel like they could have chosen a different Jane. Maybe they could have chosen somebody that wouldn't decide to leave after 2 films and then come back for a 4th film. Again, I discussed this in Thor. Should not be allowed. She should not be allowed to come back. She left for no reason, pretty much, except that she didn't really like working with Marvel. And then she just comes back? What? Anyway, Jane's character. Jane's character got worse for me. And here's a quick reason why. The reason why is because in the beginning, she was a scientist, but she was interested in Thor in a way that was scientific. She was like more interested in the beginning about the fact that he's a god. Then in the second film, she's more worried about finding him, which is fine, but like that's all she does. I'm like, you can't make a living off of finding Thor. I mean, how are they living is the main problem I'm having. Is how is Jane making money enough to live on Earth? And there's never a part where I'm like, yeah, Jane. Like, I want to root for Jane. I want to like Jane because I like Thor. Right? Like, we shouldn't not like the main character's love interest. Which is why I think that they should maybe focus a little bit more on Jane, which is why I'm excited for the 4th film. I think they're going to do a good job with the 4th film because we're going to bring Jane back and we get to see her focus on Thor more, which I think is important. So, but in this film, doesn't do it for me. Tom Hiddleston is Loki, best performance in the film. Loki is the best character in the film. I love Loki. Very excited for the Loki Disney Plus series. Anybody who doesn't like Loki is wrong. Loki's plot line is amazing. I don't want to spoil too much. I mean, I've already spoiled quite a bit. But you should watch the film, I guess, and find out for yourself. Because Loki's got a cool arc in this film, as he does throughout all of his films. I haven't written anything down. Damn. Kat Dennings as Darcy. I'm conflicted with this character, and here's why. So, Darcy is like Jane's friend that she hires to help her out with finding Thor. And she is definitely the comic relief, because in the first film we had Thor, and Thor was funny enough. But in this film, Thor wasn't funny almost at all at any point. He was in the beginning, and then as we progressed, he just got more and more serious, which is fine. I like a serious Thor movie. I think we should have more serious Thor movies, although Ragnarok was very successful and was a silly movie, and I loved it, and I will never not complain about Ragnarok. I will never complain about Ragnarok. Ragnarok was great. But if you're going to do a serious movie like The Dark World, I mean, just make it a serious film. Not every movie has to be funny. That's my big thing, is that if you want to make a serious movie, make a serious movie. It doesn't have to be funny. And so they give us this character named Darcy, and she's hilarious. I mean, every line is a comic line. That's the problem, though, is that when you look at Darcy, you're like, oh, whatever she's going to say is going to be funny, and it is. There's never a time where she's serious, and it really ruins and distracts me, because in the middle of a big fight, they're fighting this big, high elf, army, and she's like, oh, yeah, it's distracting, it's dumb, and it's funny, which is unfortunate, because that's why I'm annoyed, because I liked it, because it was funny. But I think that if her character was removed entirely, A, nothing would change, and B, it would make the movie better, because we would have at least a little bit of comedy there. that would be taken out, and it would be more of a serious film. Those are my thoughts on Kat Dennings as Darcy. Christopher Eccleston, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, as Malekith. Malekith is the High Elf, that's the bad guy. The High Elves had their own language, which was really annoying for me because I watched a version recently that didn't have subtitles. Like when I went to see it in the theaters and when I went to, see it later on, I had subtitles, but I watched a version recently, a few months ago. It didn't have subtitles, which is really annoying. I don't know why they would ever release a version that doesn't have subtitles, but didn't have subtitles. I was very confused. I knew what was going on because I'd seen the movie a few times. I mean, I've seen almost all the MCU movies like 3 or 4 times. But this one I don't go back to a lot because I don't like it very much. Malekith is cool. I mean, he's a cool bad guy, but he's not a very good villain because, I don't really care if he gets it or not. It doesn't make a difference to me if he has the power or not. I don't really care at all. I mean, and it's a one-movie villain. And that is the problem that we have with a lot of Marvel right now, in my opinion, or at least in the beginning, was we had this one enemy that would just appear for one movie and then never seen again. And I think that if they want to build the MCU, they need to do it where we have overarching villains, which is why they brought in Thanos. And it is why we're hopefully going to see a Sinister Six movie, which is good. So I can't complain about it anymore, but I can complain about it in 2013 when every single villain we had was just for a one-shot movie. And we got no background, we had no idea what these High Elves were doing back in the day, and quite frankly, we didn't care. And I think that's good tea. I think that if you want to have a compelling villain, you need to like the villain. And that is why I like Thanos so much. Look at my little baby Thanos, he's so cute. I like Thanos so much because I care about Thanos. When he was introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy, and even farther, we were like, okay, he's weird, he's kind of creepy. And then you learn why, and you're like, oh, he's trying to do a good thing. That's the best thing. But all these villains so far are all doing bad things for bad reasons. Later on in the MCU, I would say by Black Panther and on, most of the villains have a good reason for being a villain and are doing things for what they believe are good reasons. But before all this, almost everything was a selfish reason, and that is why we can't like the villains, which is why I didn't really like this villain. That is Thor: The Dark World. Oh, crack for that. That was good. I'm going to give it my rating real quick, which I'm going to give it a D. And I'm giving it a D because I did not like the film. I thought it was very, very slow, very, very boring, not enough action, too much Jane, not enough Loki. I mean, you keep rattling on. It wasn't an F, though, because, a lot of the actors did really well, really good jobs. The CGI was beautiful. I mean, Asgard is gorgeous, and the last fight is pretty cool to watch, at very least. So that is that. If you want to recommend something to me, you can drop it in the comments below. If you look over here, this is my Halloween special ticket. This is a secret that you can't hopefully read, and it is a bunch of films I will be watching. This is all requests that I have seen, and this up here is my Steve Carell list. So, I do write things down when you send them to me, and I do check them off as I go. In November, I believe, is when I will be starting to really get into the recommendations. So if you want to recommend me a film or a TV show to watch, drop it in the comments below or post it on the Facebook group. They are open, so you can post on the group, and I will allow it, so long as it is appropriate. If it is inappropriate, not necessarily the movie, but if the comment itself is inappropriate, I will take it down. So be mindful of that, and make sure you leave me something. I mean, I'd love to. My goal here is to entertain you while entertaining myself, or not entertain myself for your entertainment. So make sure you do that. Join the Facebook group. Make sure you subscribe. I know some of you are not subscribed. I know. I can see. I get the analytics. I can see if you're subscribed or not, so subscribe. And as always, keep watching films, and I will see you in the next video.